Okay, gonna get things going in 3, 2, 1. So thank you for joining me and thank you so much for being here. I am Kasey and you are apparently here to listen to me talk about what I watched last week. Well, mostly. It is more than just about what we watched, it's about the stories we got into. That just usually means it's a lot of movies and TV. At the end of the day, this is a show about spreading love for the things we love, and I do love stories. So do not think anything here is intended to be any sort of in-depth criticism or review of anything we are really discussing. There are definitely going to be criticisms in there, but I hope I never take away from the achievements of the creators behind what we're talking about here. They're making great stories here. I just want to talk about them. We did just release a bunch of DC Comics related stuff earlier this month, if that suits your fancy, and coming up next month is going to be a little more Dragon Ball related, if that is of interest to you. But that is all I have in the way of updates and introducing things, so, here be the third week of August 2024. 1969's All Monsters Attack. What do you do when the studio demands a kaiju movie and you have virtually no budget? Well, you make a movie about the very real story of a neglected child being bullied while his parents are working and daydreaming of stock footage about far more polished productions. Well, up until arrival for Manila shows up to give us some original tokusatsu moments between a little latchkey kid story and the real world. Honestly, the idea to have the monster action take place in a daydream is a really fun way to incorporate and write in the stock footage in a way that makes sense. The stock footage we also get is pretty well incorporated to the point where I would wonder if someone who had seen this as their first Godzilla movie would notice how much of the movie is pretty much just recycled footage. That and the real-world issues the production handles in its downtrodden child story is largely well handled and in an interesting way. Don't get me wrong, this still largely feels like a 70-minute PSA about stranger danger and bullying, but it's still a pretty fun PSA about stranger danger and bullying with some Godzilla stuff thrown in. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday from 1993. So is anyone else interested in the story of whoever finally convinced law enforcement they needed to absolutely obliterate Jason Voorhees? Or was that just me? As far as this story goes, it's new studio, new rules. Not that we cared too much about continuity in the past, but it might as well not exist going forward, FYI. And, that's okay. It lets us do weird things, like make the spirit of Jason take the form of a demon worm who possesses whoever eats his heart. Or give him a sister and a niece and an ancient family curse linked to the Necronom in the Evil Dead movie. Sure, why not? As a Friday the 13th movie, the only thing really recognizable are the kills that finally deliver on the visceral gore that you thought the series had in the previous 8 movies before you saw them, especially within the unrated version of this movie. If you are the kind of person who likes to try and remove the story from a source material and view it as its own sort of thing, it's still a very weird movie about snowballing a demon worm to do body swap killings, 2022's Fall. So I have jumped out of an airplane, and this movie managed to give me so much anxiety that I had to watch it in 3 sittings. I don't know what better compliment I can give a movie about a pair of friends climbing up and being trapped on top of a stupidly tall tower to get over their grief of a horror movie husband. I'm so glad I watched this. I'm glad I own this. But it's definitely going to be a hot minute before I put it on again. Awesome. 2004's Steamboy. How come it took me this long to learn that Akira mangaka and director, which happens way less than you'd think. Katsuhiro Otomo has only directed one other feature, and it's this. And Steamboy is definitely not Akira, for better or worse, more so channeling Ghibli and Castle in the Sky mixed with Otomo's distinct art style, and you'd never guess it, but lots of steampunk to deliver a story about morality and warmongering and the disparity of capitalism. When a grizzled young kid has to keep a power core out of the evil people's hands and his flying pipe-filled castle in an alternate reality Britain. 2010's Iron Man 2. Here where we watch Tony Stark deal with his mortality with alcohol and super science while a Russian dude with the board smacks around whips in the background. Out of all the things the MCU has or has not done in recent years that is conceived as bad or good, at least they did not try to brush over alcoholism with something as simple as, he needs to do a science. And when the action that is balancing out that lack of substance is as short as it is on top, this remains one of the bigger nothing movies for me in the MCU's catalog. I'm sorry. I think the movie does a pretty good job at incorporating the wider world of the Marvel Universe without getting lost in the lore and fan service. I think Sam Rockwell's Justin Hammer is also a really fun contrast to Tony Stark. I hope many people find joy in Iron Man 2, but it continues to just not vibe on a personal level here. 1991's Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Did anybody know that Peter Jackson wrote like a draft for this? Or am I just like really late to the party on that news? Abandoning any characters or through line from the previous installments, we follow a couple of random troubled youths who accidentally release Freddy Krueger into the wider world with the help of his long-lost child. Everything I said negatively about the previous installment, yeah, you can kind of double down on that. If the previous installment felt like paint by numbers, this might as well be like a children's coloring book. It doesn't care if anyone is coloring inside the lines anymore. It very much feels like we just wanted to get something finished and released to say the franchise was done. It still wasn't. And I don't like how down I am on this movie. I think Robert Englund continues to bring a lot of energy to the role that he made so iconic. It also doesn't feel like anyone was particularly fucked over during production, which I always respect and appreciate. We don't need to exploit our actors. I don't know, are there any huge Freddy's Dead fans out there? 2024's Watchmen, Chapter 1. I see we didn't allocate any of the budget to animating the penis this time around. Listen, this is a very straightforward animated adaptation of Alan Moore's Watchmen split into parts 1 of 2. One of the original What If Superheroes, but they sucked stories. If you're wondering where it strays most from the comics, it's in all the dick and the tits have been toned way down. Cowards. Otherwise, it's pretty much depicted as it was originally written, Alan Moore dialogue and all. Which means every complaint is going to come down to whether or not you like the execution and whether or not you like the 3D cel-shaded animation style. Which I personally felt worked really well for the most part, but I'm me. Doctor Who, The Savages from 1966. The planet we've arrived on this week is relatively advanced. Everything seems on the up and up. Don't love that there's a class of untouchables and, okay, now we're literally draining them of their life force to benefit the rich. This is one of those stories that shows the themes and the general mentality that Doctor Who would be known for in the future. Everyone has a moment where they definitely put their foot down and stand firm. The Doctor feels more on character and empathetic than in previous installments. Dodo does that thing where she is strong and firm in 1 minute and fainting in the next, while Steven is given a touch more to shine in his final serial in the series. Steven deciding to get off here on a random planet doesn't feel nearly as powerful as his exit would have been at the end of the massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, but there is enough weight given to the moment that it feels important despite only existing in telesnap reconstructed form. This is also a story that works pretty well in the form we have it in the telesnap form. The reconstructions are clear and easy to understand despite there not being any real dynamic movement for the audience to follow, and moves at a pace that doesn't make it feel like it's homework to absorb the story. I really do wish we could properly watch Steven's exit from the series. He has proven to be a solid and engaging companion throughout the entire show. My Adventures with Superman, Season 2 from 2024. Continuing our very straightforward anime-inspired adaptation of the Superman mythos from Season 1, so all the big reveals are out of the way for us to focus on the developing relationship of Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen. We still get to play with the secret identity antics with a disgraced General Lane hanging around, but the bulk of the series' action is moved forward by Amanda Waller in the series' first half, then swerving to really dedicate time to the introduction of Supergirl and Brainiac in the latter half of the show. The second season of the hugely successful contemporary Superman series continues with every major storyline and thread teased in the season that came before. Not everyone is seen to completion, but much is intentionally left up for the next season and, hopefully the fourth and the fifth and however many they want to go with this. Do I think the pointy anime aesthetic works for every character? Sure don't, but I'm not going to let my shitty personal taste keep me from a series that is so full of rich character writing and storytelling, wrapping these real-world insecurities into mythic heroes in a way that lets them overcome themselves whilst at the same time giving us plenty of big bad people to punch and laser at in really epic fashion. The City of Lost Children from 1995. How come nobody talks about this surreal science fiction fantasy nightmare? One part watching a depressed and eccentric scientist and his man-children clones, one part Ron Perlman teaming up with orphans to find his little brother who was kidnapped by a Cyclops cult to sell to that aforementioned scientist. I love how weird this movie is from the get-go. It fits in perfectly with the works of Gilliam and Del Toro and Lanthimos, deeply stylized and thematic, taking its time to linger on just how strange this world is and to disguise a beautiful story. 2024's Alien Romulus. Has the company been welching on their promises because you live in a capitalist hellscape? Don't worry, the company also leaves whole space stations hanging around empty full of equipment to jack. It's also, kind of infested with aliens. Alien Romulus easily replicates the anxiety and the tone of the original movie more so than its siblings by far, emphasizing atmosphere and fast-paced horror, and its two main characters over action and large body counts. I imagine the biggest complaints are going to be about the quick gestation period for the titular alien. Baby comes to term in record time, I think. And a few lines of fan service sprinkled throughout that never seemed more or less egregious than previous installments to me personally. The further I step back, the more nits I see there are to pick, but even with those grumbles, this is easily one of the most engaging and scary alien movies for me in a very long time. 2010's The Losers. So of all the movies that came out in 2010 about a squad of disgraced soldiers fighting for revenge and to clear their name from a shitty guy in a suit, this manages to stand out because of its exceptional cast, all of whom bounce off of each other really organically and feel like they're having a good time all together. This movie is perhaps a little over-edited and a little generic, but it's competently made and doesn't hold many punches. I am not particularly familiar with the source material, so I am looking at this in isolation as well and, like it far more than I do not. 2001's Jason X. Okay, so according to Jason X, we have until the end of this year to enjoy the NHL. Who do you think's going to win the final Stanley Cup? In the not-too-distant future. We've given up on trying to kill Jason, so we opt to freeze the zombie instead. But after the United States prison system or whoever is holding Jason has a minor fuck-up, a scientist gets frozen with our series lead. Cut to a few hundred years in the future, and it looks like everyone is equally inept at dealing with an unstoppable killing machine on a spaceship as they are in the woods. Jason X manages to feel low budget in a completely different capacity than its brother and sister features. We aren't utilizing our lack of funds to build up atmosphere and think of creative camera tricks. This time around we are just gonna do it all in post. Great. This installment also takes a drastic shift in tone that we haven't seen since part 6 and Jason was newly zombified. A tone that I have always appreciated, but mixed with the different kind of low-budget vibe, I understand why this is more of a divisive Jason movie. Doctor Who, The War Machines from 1966. Back on contemporary Earth, minding our own business, when some super scientists up and built a super AI that learns how to hypnotize people through the phones and, make killer robots. Oh, what fun for the Doctor and... Dodo is brainwashed and missing in action? Okay, so the Doctor and introducing new companions, Ben and Polly. I think these classic serials have a bad habit of giving us a feeling that we are punishing our companions in their final stories, probably because the studio had a really bad habit of punishing their actors, and it shows. Never has the revolving cast of Doctor Who felt so in the forefront as to when a companion just fell sick off screen and is virtually forgotten going forward. I also got really confused thinking somehow this was the birth of the Great Intelligence, but no, we just call the War Machine a supreme intelligence that makes discount Daleks in a series fraught with discount Daleks and name brand Daleks. The story itself is certainly not uninteresting or well done, but does get drowned out by the very evident on-set drama leaking into the scripts. Okay, but yeah, that is everything we metaphorically consumed last week. Thank you for sticking with me through the video. I do hope everyone got to watch something special in their own right last week, and I'd love to know whatever that was for you. What did you watch last week? Now, one more time, we did a bunch of DC-related stuff that last month, and this upcoming month it's going to be all Dragon Ball related, and plus what we watched last week, the normal things we do on this channel. So, thank you all for being amazing and being you, and keep being good. Thank you.